Hello, listeners. My name is Josh McLaughlin, Solutions Consultant at Strategies Group. I'm here today to discuss a favorite topic of mine in the Acumatica ecosystem, fixed assets. I'll begin the demonstration by highlighting a few prerequisites which are essential for creating assets in Acumatica. Similar to other modules, much of the default settings are configured within the Preferences screen. On the Fixed Asset Preferences, we must define the Fixed Asset Accrual Account and Sub. These account settings will be the driving force behind asset procurement. This account is kind of like an asset clearing account. It will record expenses and revenues associated with the asset prior to them being realized. And from this account, we'll convert the unrealized amounts into asset creation, addition, or deduction in the asset module. To do this, I'll need to create a transaction that references this FA accrual account. I can do that from directly within the general ledger or from within the AP subledger. I prefer the two to match, so I've elected to create an AP bill for the procurement of this asset. Now I've created an AP bill which has a few line items, and each of these line items is referencing the fixed asset accrual. I'm expecting each one of these line items to be eligible to become new assets on the conversion screen. After I release this transaction, those line items will become eligible. Now that this transaction has been released, let's navigate to the Convert Purchases to Assets screen so we can convert it into a new asset. The account and sub-account have been pulled over from the Fixed Asset Preferences screen. I've filtered this grid to display all line items that have that AP bill reference number. So you can see the three line items that we just created. You need to select one of those and add a new line in the bottom portion of the grid. A new asset is going to be created from this, but no new asset ID is necessary because I have auto numbering enabled. We will, however, have to define the asset class. I'm going to select the building asset class, and then I'm going to go navigate to that class itself so I can show you which of these values are going to be defaulted. You'll set things like whether it's depreciable, the useful life of the asset, FA books, and the depreciation method you're going to be using over the course of this life, and then the GL transactions that are going to default for assets affiliated with this class. Now that it's clear which values are going to be brought over, we need to select the department, verify all of the other values are accurate, and process. Once processed, we can navigate back to the fixed asset screen to hopefully review the new asset that has just been created. I'll refresh the screen. And here it is. You'll notice a lot of these values have defaulted in from that asset class, but you can modify them for the time being until transactions for this asset have posted to the general ledger. If you go into the Other Info tab, you'll notice the correlating AP transaction that this asset derives from. It was auto-populated on that conversion. Any transactions that are associated with this asset will be located in the Transactions tab. It's going to use any book that we have affiliated with this asset, but I want to focus on the posting book because this is the one that is going to post to the GL. Now, this transaction exists and this asset exists, but until we release it, isn't actually placed in service. So I need to navigate to this fixed asset transaction. I can navigate to it from this hyperlink, or I can go to the fixed asset transaction screen and locate it there. This is the transaction associated with the purchase of this asset and bringing it into life. Now that this transaction has been released, let's go back to the fixed asset and verify that the grid has been updated with those values. You'll notice that next to this reference number, there's now a general ledger batch, and the released checkbox has been selected. You can click on this batch number to navigate to the journal transaction screen. I will go there manually and review this transaction that is associated with the purchase of this new asset. Now that this asset is active, the next thing for us to do in its life cycle is to depreciate. Depreciation is calculated based off of a number of variables such as the useful life, the depreciation method, acquisition cost, averaging convention, etc. We're going to use a simplistic straight line depreciation method, which spreads depreciation evenly across the useful life of the asset. You'll notice in each of the profiles, there will be a depreciation tab where a grid displays the useful life on a period basis with nothing calculated currently. To calculate what depreciation should look like, we select these three ellipse dots and calculate depreciation. Once the system loads these values, we take a look in the grid to verify that depreciation is evenly distributed over the useful life of this asset, which it appears to be. The system has provided projected values, but to actually depreciate this asset, we need to navigate to the mass processing screen, Calculate Depreciation. Here you'll notice that there are a bunch of assets which are eligible for depreciation, and they're displayed here on screen. I want to filter for just the asset that we've created, so we can just take a look at it and isolate it. It has a line for each of the books, but I want to focus on the posting book since this is the one going to be posting to the GL. Current period lets us know which period needs to be depreciated first. I only want to look at one for an example as opposed to releasing multiple transactions, so I'll set that period to the current period. Set the action to depreciate and process. Once processed, we can expand this to verify that a transaction has been created for this depreciation. If we navigate back to the asset, the Transactions tab will display that for us. This new line is the depreciation expense for the period. Again, it's not set to auto release, so I've got to go to the fixed asset transaction screen and release it. All the values look accurate, so I release. Now that the first month's depreciation has been released, let's navigate back to the asset and check to see if there are any changes in the value of the asset. We can refresh and notice now that the batch has been created, and balance will be updated in the posting book only, because that's the one we selected. Last depreciation period is also updated to the one we just worked on. Accumulated depreciation equals the transaction amount. Net value is less that accumulated depreciation. Now let's assume everything else is going well with this asset, but somewhere along the lines we need to make an adjustment to it. Say we have an addition to the building that we just acquired and we need to update the asset to reflect that new addition. Now I can convert this into an asset or a component of this existing asset from the Convert Purchases to Assets screen. But there's another way to do it from within this asset itself, and I'd like to display that now. We'll navigate to the Reconciliation tab of the asset. We're going to try and find one of the remaining two lines from the original AP bill that we created at the beginning of this example. I'm going to navigate over to the reference number, and I will filter for that AP bill number, and I'll see the two remaining lines that are here. I see the new addition to the building that I need to add. I select, and I need to make sure that the addition is selected in the reconciliation type. I need to set a date for which the asset addition needs to take place, and process. You notice the line has been removed from the reconciliation tab, and new warnings appear that an unreleased reconciliation transaction exists and we need to take care of it before proceeding. So we navigate to the transaction screen, and we do see that there is a new transaction for the amount of the new addition. We'll just navigate to the fixed asset transaction screen, and we will release it. Now that it's been released, let's navigate back to the fixed asset to check and see if there's any modification to the net book value since the release of this new purchase edition. We'll find this both in the Transactions tab, which displays individual transactions, but most importantly in the Balance tab of the asset. You'll notice that the current cost is now a little bit higher than what the acquisition cost originally was. The net value is still less one period of depreciation, but it also includes that new addition into the net value. You can also reduce asset value in a very similar fashion. The final big stage of the asset is how we get rid of or dispose of the asset. Disposal could mean many things to a company, but in this case, we're just going to be selling the land because we're moving physical locations to another branch. In this case, we're selling shortly after the asset was acquired. Call it buyer's remorse, if you will. Now I need to sell it. Up here in the actions, you'll notice that there is a dispose processing action. I need to define the date, the proceed account, and I need to define the disposal method. We are going to be selling this one, so I'm going to select the sold disposal method. And I have my proceeds account, the date is accurate, and I click OK. Now the asset has been disposed, but we need to release the FA transactions associated with that disposal. So we navigate to the fixed asset transaction screen. Again, you can go there from the hyperlink here, but we need to release this disposal transaction so it reverses anything in the FA book. Once released, navigate back to the asset, click refresh. You should notice a status change in the asset from active to disposed. As you can see, this is dispose of the asset and you can no longer edit any of these values. Perhaps you've made a mistake and you need to revert those changes. This is not set in stone. There is one final action for you to use. It is the reverse disposal. And this effectively is reversing any changes that you've made as if they never existed. Similar to the disposal itself, we need to release the reversal of that disposal in the fixed asset transaction screen. Now that this has been released, we can navigate back to the fixed asset and hopefully it's been brought back into action. I'll refresh the screen and see if those changes have been applied. The asset is back in active status, and I now have the ability to continue the depreciable life cycle of this asset or to redispose under the proper parameters. As you can see from this accelerated demo of the asset's lifecycle, Acumatica provides a seamless integration with other modules, flexibility, and simple automated processes to optimize your asset management for accuracy, compliance, and efficiency. Thank you for your time.